This episode of Around the Layout is brought to you by the family of offerings from Scale Modeling by Kevin J. Tully. Come see them at the St. Louis RPM July 19th and 20th at the Gateway Center in Collinsville, Illinois. With a wide variety of steel mill and grain industry modeling supplies on display, Kevin will show you how he can help take the realism of your industries to the next level. For more info, check out their website at steelmillmodelersupply.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you could join us. It's almost time for the 2024 St. Louis RPM. I'm really excited about it actually going out this year. So got two guys that are involved with the St. Louis RPM. We've first got a frequent attendee in Scott Thornton. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ray. Good to be here.
And the man who Scott claims is the reason why the St. Louis RPM is the RPM to go to, Lonnie Bathurst. Lonnie, good to see you.
Hi to both of you. Thanks for having me on.
Great to see you both. It's been a little while. Lonnie, I think it's been over a year since we talked about this last St. Louis RPM. And Scott, it's been way too long. Last time you were on the show, we were talking about your book, which is still a classic and everybody's been talking about, your scenic and weathering book. Got any more in the chamber there, Scott? What have you been up to lately?
No, I do not have any books in the queue, but what I've been up to is just focusing on my layout. And since we last talked, I have gotten into O scale as well as HO. So you could call me a rubber gauger. You know, I bounce back and forth between the two scales. So that's new for me.
That's awesome. At least you went bigger. I've been messing around lately with an N-scale car, painting it for an upcoming project. And boy, oh boy, I thought HO was tough. And then I tried painting N-scale and all the little details. And then I broke the stirrups off the car. So now I'm trying to make stirrups in N-scale and ended up bending a staple and kind of slid it in there, made it look like a stirrup. But boy, oh boy, I just learning how bad my vision's getting and how my dexterity is going away.
That's exactly why I went to O, Ray. I can see everything very, very well, and the mass of the scale is really fun. So I'm a newbie. I have a lot to learn. It's quite different from HO, as you might imagine. It's there's a lot more custom building involved because O scale doesn't have quite as big a following as HO. So that's something new, but it's fun.
Awesome. Always cool to try new things and expand out in the hobby. And for Lonnie, this must be your busy time of year as we're just about a month away. We're recording on the 10th of June, and we're looking at the St. Louis RPM starting on the 18th of July. So it must be silly season for you.
Oh, it's crazy. I don't know how many hours a week I put into this, how many emails I deal with, but it's insane. And I hope that it's pretty much behind us in a couple of weeks, so we have 2 weeks or more to sort of unwind and just focus on game day when it all starts. It's amazing. It's a task that gets somehow bigger every year, even though we have great help and computerization and has digitized so much of the process. The human element of it, you still deal with every exhibitor and every clinician probably 5 times. So, hundreds and hundreds of emails and phone calls. And this is it. It's the press is on to get everything done in time to look like we're calm, and it's on with the show.
Hey, Lonnie, I have a question. How many are on your team?
We have 6 of us that have fairly significant jobs. They range from me they all think of me as a producer of this event. And I think of Jeff Kubler as a kind of a general manager on a lot of the detail and computerization. Dave Rader is the guy who makes the floor plan come together with the convention center staff. And then 3 others that spend more time working during that event than the rest of the year. Mark Lewis has become our treasurer. And that, there's a lot of checks in and out. Brian McQuitty handles all those details like, gee, why don't we come up with banners for our learning station? So he makes that happen. And at the event, Dave Lowell, who is very big in the NMRA at the Mid-Continent region level and the Gateway division level, helps us at the event all day long, both days. So those 6 do it, plus maybe 15 that work registration and help get people in the back door when we're at the docks loading. And that makes it go. This is certainly the old case of one man is not an island. It takes a lot of people to make it work.
I'm curious, how many bouncers do you hire to take control of those unruly and overexcited modelers?
Well, Dave Lowell is our biggest guy, and but we don't have too much trouble. In fact, it's a funny thing that you say that, because each year that we work with the Gateway Center, if we're behind the 8 ball on anything, because we're all volunteers and we have other stuff that keeps us busy if we're awake. And so they have to remind us of some things along the way. We're apologetic about that. And they very politely but very clearly stated, you have a building full of nice guys that are aging. They don't drink much. They behave. We don't have any urinals ripped out of the wall during the day like they do at some wedding receptions. It's a pretty docile crowd. So they're thrilled with us. I'm almost tired of these. They'll hire new business agents to work with us. And each time the young lady says, gee, you remind me of my dad or my grandpa. That hurts.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, it's a good group.
So Lonnie, give us a little bit of history. I know the last time that we had talked, you talked about your involvement. How long have you been doing this? I
started actually in year 1 with John Golden, who's the godfather of this particular RPM. And he started it in O'Fallon, Illinois, in a small building, just asking some vendors and exhibitors to come there for the first time, and had pretty much a local turnout, other than probably vendors came from near and far. And I happened to be there as a gopher. I came and helped load tables out of a trailer, and he had rented, those 8-foot tables, and we set them up, just soaked in sweat from getting the thing going that hot summer day. And then, I don't know, by year 3, I was somehow active with ideas and helped, more at the management level from then on. And John was kind of in control, even as he went to Europe and spent 5 years there. He had a lot of say-so and direction and vendors and clinicians and so forth. But with each passing year, he got busier and busier with raising kids, and the show got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, I just kind of helped take the load off of him. So around for most of the 17 years, really.
Wow, that's quite a bit of time that you've done, but you've learned it from the ground up. And Scott, how long have you been attending the St. Louis RPM?
I think the first one I attended was in 2016. So was that 8 years? So I've gone every year. I don't miss it. For me, it's the premier event, a model railroading event of the year. And I absolutely love everything about it. For me, it's only a 6-hour drive. So it's a comfortable drive for me to get to the venue. And it's got everything that I personally enjoy. Tons and tons of models, lots of great vendors. The clinics, as many know, with RPMs are geared, obviously the topics are across the board typically, although Lonnie has a theme every year. He still has a lot of variety within the overarching theme. And, as you brought up in a lot of your shows, Ray, it's all about the fellowship and the relationships. And every year you get to renew those friendships with people you haven't seen for those 12 months. And that's what makes it so enjoyable for me.
Now, I was going to ask you that, and I'll rephrase it in a different way, because you've been going for 8 years, and there's RPMs throughout the country. But what is it that makes the St. Louis RPM the show to go to? Well,
I don't want to, cast any shadow over the other RPMs throughout the country, because I've heard wonderful things, and in the future, as my wife and I take opportunities to travel, we'd love to attend some of the other RPMs. In fact, there's a new one that's starting up out in Colorado, this fall, and I won't be attending this fall, but I hope to go next year. So, there's a lot of good RPMs.
Oh, for sure.
But St. Louis, for whatever reason, and Lonnie could speak to this, has gained the reputation as the granddaddy of them. I don't know the history, so I don't know if that's just because they've been operating the longest or the scale, the volume of people who come. I'm not sure. Lonnie, you could speak to that.
Well, we aren't the oldest running. I would say Chicagoland, Naperville has been around the longest in terms of years. And there are two or three others that I think are widely popular. People like going to Florida in January and Cocoa Beach at that RPM. I've attended several times. I try to make it every year. I don't always get there for the usual reasons that people don't always fly halfway across the country to Florida when they want to. And I try to never miss Chicago because it's, to your point about driving, it's only a 4-hour drive for me, and I have family in the area, and I just love it. I can kick back and enjoy myself for 2 days, and I don't have to do anything. I regret it when I miss it. But for ours, it's the central part of the country, so you don't have to go clear across North America to get to it from somewhere. I think it's a good time of year. The weather's good. Family vacations are going on. People sometimes don't do a lot of modeling in the summer, but some of the hardcore or dedicated ones are at it almost 12 months of the year, so they're in. That's all good. I think the location in being in the Metro East on the Illinois side of the river makes the cost pretty tolerable for housing and the use of the facility and so forth, so pricing's always been good. But I think John would say this, having been around the longest and the founder, that I kept trying to bring on new ideas that would, as I say it, cause someone in the hobby that likes the prototype modeling to cast their dollar vote and spend their time and come to Collinsville, to the St. Louis RPM. I told them all through the years, Dan Kohlberg and the others involved, that we are all consumers. And we have this dollar vote as to how we spend our money, spend our time, where we do it, what we do, all of that. So one of you alluded to the fact that this is kind of the whole package. And I think that having a selection of a half a dozen or more hotels gives you choice, and they're all pretty decent, and the price is fine. Having a theme allows us to do a deeper dive into one particular topic, but we also, like all the RPMs, cover 15 other topics that you want to range from layouts to DCC to whatever you can label. And so there's something for everyone. We try to focus on the models, and that's always been the point we've pushed, that it's about the models. But in that, I'm wise enough to know that train guys love to buy trains. So we have a few hobby shops, yet we limit that number because we don't want to be considered a train show or a swap meet or anything like that. And we focus on manufacturers. When the price is reasonable, it's not hard for the person in charge of finance to say, you can afford hotels and travel to the central part of the country and sleeping in Collinsville. So it's not a big expense where we are. So we get the smallest of the new vendors, the 3D printing folks and so forth, and yet the crowd size attracts the granddaddy of all of the manufacturers. You all can name the half dozen or so big manufacturers that maybe make locomotives or rolling stock or whatever all they do. They attend as well. So there's something there for everybody. There's enough clinics to keep you busy for 2 days. So whatever it is you like about an RPM, we try to have that, but also spread around the list of what you might like so we appeal to a lot of people. I don't think you can have an event anywhere near this size if you focus on only one thing. We don't want this to just be a buying event or just about clinics or other things, but when you have something for everyone, then that snowballs and more people come, and that generates more people to talk to and more things to do and more opportunities to have fun. And we want to cast your dollar vote to leave there thinking, that was all good. I think I'll come back. That's my thinking on how to produce an event that people like and try to keep it within the RPM community of how that works.
Well, I'm certainly a big fan of the continuous improvement mentality that you've presented there, Lonnie, by every year trying to make a little better and add things and knowing what people want and hearing the things that they want within the event. And I think my wallet thanks you for not having too many vendors out there, because that could be a challenge in itself to keep it in the pocket. But yeah, I think that's all of it that makes it incredible and enough to hear about it across the country. I mean, it's just, you hear the St. Louis RPM. Kind of curious about other RPMs. How do you guys network? I mean, how do you network with other RPMs, and how does that go?
Well, since I'm typically only attending the Cocoa Beach in Chicago, my experience would be primarily with those two in terms of walking up, shaking their hands. Hey, how you doing? Is there something I can do for you? And spreading the word about their good events. But others in other cities, as they've started them up, have called. I've had 3 or 4 calls over the last several years about, how did you do this? What makes this work? What do you suggest here? And I tell them what we try to do, and I'm happy with anybody copying anything we do that makes their event more successful and the hobby grow. To me, this is all about promoting the hobby and getting more people to like the hobby so we can sustain it. And I think the people that are RPMers share what they know, and they're happy to do that. It makes it a wonderful bunch to be engaged with.
Scott, to me, it sounds kind of like the spirit of model railroading in general, doesn't it? No matter whether it be if you're trying to share some weathering tips or layout tips, or even how to do an RPM or sharing ideas, it just seems like that whole spirit of model railroading is that cooperativeness and the fellowship that you were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. But I think with RPMs, generally speaking, you get the serious modelers, the ones who are focused on specific aspects of the hobby that relate to prototype modeling. So you get a lot of operations-oriented guys. You get the guys who really want to reproduce the models to look uber realistic and, across the board. So you get that flavor of the seriousness of the hobby. And by seriousness, I don't mean that. I mean, their intent is to model it as closely as possible to the prototype. That's what I mean. They're just focused.
Yeah, I'll say in a different way, and maybe a little more controversial way, are all of us that are full on weird, right? Like, we're just totally into it and love it. And now we're finding like-minded people at these RPMs that are, like you said, serious. I mean, to me, that means, totally into it, like just absolutely love it and will consume a ton of it into what they enjoy doing.
Right. And I don't want to get into trouble and pigeonhole modelers, but as we all know, there's different niches within the hobby where you have the guys who just like to hang out at the club and run trains, or you've got everything from the Lego guys to the modular guys that just want to run, again, the trains in a circle and have it be whimsical. And that's great. There's
Right.
plenty of room for everything in this hobby, as we know. But the RPMs have that flavor of, okay, we're gonna model, we're gonna operate like the prototype primarily, and that flavor permeates, I think, through the RPMs, and that's what I like.
Absolutely. Again, I'm just so excited to be able to actually get out to see this for the first time. And we've been talking a little bit about the schedule and stuff pre-show, and I want to dive into it a little bit here with you, Lonnie. Why don't you talk about what the schedule looks like, starting with Friday, Saturday was kind of the advertised dates, but really things start to kick off on Thursday night.
That's true. I think that we'll change how we advertise this next year in terms of what we inform people about and promote, because to a point made earlier in the conversation, we've really started this to be a Thursday night event. We've always encouraged the attendees to come on Thursday, go to this place called Bandanas that they can walk to from most of the hotels. It's an inexpensive, easygoing barbecue place. And so dozens and dozens and dozens of RPMers, including the exhibitors, come in there. They get there on Thursday night. They need to eat. That's pretty simple, tasty stuff. So there they go. So you can go there and rub shoulders with lots of people that you see in the media and that you know are manufacturing what you want to buy. And then after that, we simply say, well, mosey over to the Doubletree, which we call our host hotel, and I can speak to that a little later, and then just go to the lounge and chat it up some more. This year, we added layout tours on Thursday night. So I guess it makes an official event that the vendors can get their registration packets on Thursday evening, and the attendees can pick up the instructions on which two layouts are available in the immediate area for touring from 6 until 10. We don't put that information out beforehand because the homeowners really don't want the world at large to know that they have a train down there and people can come. But if you are an RPMer, they tend to trust you. So we tell them where they are and what they're doing and hand that out. So yes, Thursdays become really the opening night.
That's one thing that I found too is, whether it be a national convention or a regional convention or an RPM, a lot of information gets shared, not only in the event, but the conversations that happen at these after hours events are pretty incredible. Can you kind of back me on that, Scott?
Absolutely. In fact, some of the most enjoyable times I've had at the RPM is when I meet new modelers, new friends, and we go out for dinner. In addition to just the conversations that you have when you're in the display or the vendor area and you're just roaming around and meeting people or new people. It's so enjoyable. I mean, as we all know, model railroaders are some of the most friendly folks around. Everyone's excited to be there. Everyone's happy. So it makes for a great event. One thing about the St. Louis RPM is it's got enough volume of models and a good number of vendors and a lot of attendees. So there's a energy there that affects everyone who attends. There's a lot going on, and just that overall energy makes things very exciting. And Lonnie, I think you could speak to what you anticipate for the numbers this year, because you had told me in an earlier conversation that you wouldn't be surprised if you get up to 900 attendees. Is that true?
That's true. We're having ID badges and the programs printed for 1,000, which I don't know that we'd get there, but I think that as we've grown almost every year if not by 10%, more than 5, I can see us getting to the 900 range. The economy's good enough. Everybody seems to be happy. I think it would be a good possibility. Plus, as they look through the website and see that we've added quite a few exhibitors, manufacturers of 3D things, and then the big guys, like Bachman is new this year, and Broadway Limited. So I think there's enough out there to create traction to attract more people, and we think it's going to be the biggest ever.
Weren't you telling me, too, that there are, was it 7 or 9 3D printing companies coming? I think it's quite a few, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember if it's 7 or 9, but I know it's up there. We have quite a few. We added, I think, 15 exhibitors this year, which is, quite a few. I think we added around 30 tables and about 15% in vendor increase. I was working earlier before we started talking, and I think I'm on 75 entities, companies that have completed the registration process, and I know I need to get in touch with about 15 more that are behind the 8 ball and getting their stuff back to me. So we're going to have quite a room filled full of exhibitors.
I know in previous years, Ray, there was quite a number of 3D printers, and it keeps growing every year. And to me, that's terribly exciting because these vendors provide many more models to the modeler than what than what can be produced by the big manufacturers like Walthers or some of the others. it's always interesting to get to the show and discover what new models are being produced.
Well, I imagine the 3D printing folks are the ones that are feeding the niche, the ones that, these specialty things, and what better place to find specialty people than at an RPM, right? So it all kind of goes hand in hand when, you've got guys that are drilled down, rivet counter level mentalities, and the 3D printing guys can get them what they exactly need, which is just, it's a great relationship. So awesome that you're going to have those vendors there to be able to provide that resource.
And the sheer number of models is impressive too. Lonnie, how many models on average do you think the last couple of years there's been?
I would say that there's in the range of 4,000 if you include the 100 tables where people put them out by the dozens and then go to the various exhibitors that they'll have their own stuff on display. Somebody will have, say, Dan Kohlberg with his ICG decals. He might have 10 or 15 models there that he built from, just a bare shell and went from that. And so that's laying all over the place. And then to your point about the 3D, I think we have maybe upwards of 5 that are making new rail cars, 3D printing, beautiful models of HO scale and maybe I'm not sure what all, but primarily HO scale and O in 3D printing. And then it seems like coal, steel, grain, and maritime, as well as maintenance away, have drawn a lot of people to the 3D world. And we have some of all that there. And I don't think 5 years ago it was, you didn't see very good stuff, not very much of it. And now it's beautiful and a lot of it. Yeah, they are our greatest growth in our RPM. They just want to get there and show what they have.
I know when I look over the models, it's so overwhelming. There's too much to see. And when I get home from the RPM, and within a few weeks, there'll be photos published of all the models. There's guys who go around and shoot every model on every table. And I'll peruse through those photos and I'll be amazed at how many models I missed. It's like, goodness gracious, man, how did I miss getting a good look at that particular model and that particular model and that one when I was right there and I thought I covered everything, but there's really too much to absorb, to be honest.
Yeah, I look at the models. I try to look at them over those 2 days. In fact, I created that hour on Friday from 5 until 6, where the part of the building that has the exhibitors, vendors, historical societies, we close that off, let them rest, and we focus on just the models. So I have an hour that I can walk around and look at them. But I've found that I go back to our website afterwards, and all those pictures are posted. This year, Jeff Kubler's son, Eric, who just graduated with some kind of background in, I'll say, computer software engineering. I don't know what his title will be, but he's very good at website development. He's put this website together for us, and they managed to upload all of the photos that John and I and Mark Lewis and several professionals have taken over many years. So now you can go to the media gallery, and there are photos from 2004 all the way up to present day each year, and thousands of them. So it's a cool place to go. I mean, that's entertainment in itself. And I sure don't have the time those 2 days to do it. So I enjoy going back there and looking.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a bit of sensory overload when you walk in that room and see all these models. I am curious, though, if somebody's listening to this podcast right now that's going to the St. Louis RPM and they have a prized possession model, how would they go about exhibiting it? Talk about that process.
Thank you. I'd forgotten about that, but I'm just about to start that phase of planning for this, that we have something that we call an early entry modeler program. And we'll get that out on the proto sites and other places very soon to invite and encourage modelers to bring all they can, whether it's a diorama or a whole train or a barge or a grain elevator or locomotive, steam or otherwise, all of that, just bring them in. And what we do is when we open the registration process at 9 a.m. on Friday, if we look out into the crowd and see lines and guys are standing there holding boxes of models, we pull them off to the side and put them in kind of an express lane and say, come on in. And that's just for those with 2 or 3 or 4 or a handful of models. But the early entry modeler program, we try to get the emails of a lot of the modelers around the country that tend to come to this, send them out a note early and say something along the effect of, we're going to open the door at 7:30 or 8, Dock C or whatever it is this year. Come to that back door, and if you have 2 dozen or more, or you have something big or heavy that takes time to set up, you can come in. We'll put a green ID badge on you, and you can do your thing and have it all set up before the crowd gets there at 9, and then just go up front and register at a special place before we open the door for the rest. So it's a method to try to treat those people that contribute so much a little extra special. Get them in early, give them some time to relax and set their stuff up, and then get them registered before the others. So that's been a big help. And there's nothing to register for in advance unless you're a clinician or an exhibitor. So as an attendee, you just show up in Collinsville and wait for the place to open. But if you're an early entry modeler, we have a place for you to come in early. And that helps a lot and it lessens the chaos and makes them feel better too. And that's explained on our website.
Yeah, we'll definitely get folks to that. It's STLRPM.com. A lot of resources on there. They've done an excellent job with the website, and we'll also provide those links in our show notes and also on our website, aroundthelayout.com/episodes/104 is where you can find all that information.
Ray, one more question, a comment on that I forgot. Under the resources tab, there is the modelers form where you can list your name, phone number, email, whatever you want, and another form that describes the model, how it was made, what it is, hours you put into it, whatever you want to put there. So if they go to that site first, type in what they want, print it out, they don't even have to fill out their model form at the event. It's all done very nicely in advance form. So that's a good place to go if you're somebody bringing models, whether you're bringing 2 of them or 25 of them.
Excellent. You got a lot of great resources, a lot of information right here on your website. You've done an excellent job with it, including the schedule that we were talking about. So let's talk about Friday and what we can expect to see on Friday at the St. Louis RPM.
Okay, I kind of think that's the biggest day. Not only is it the longest day, but most of the people show up that day. The dedicated ones that come in on Thursday are there to open the door at 9 if they're simply attendees and not exhibitors. And so 9 o'clock, you get in the door, pay your way in. Then the clinics start at 9:30. We run those about, every hour and a half, something like that. You'll find a 45-minute clinic, a few minutes to breathe between them. We have 2 at a time. We don't have the facility, and we didn't develop the business model around some other facility to have 3 or 4 clinics at the same time. So, several of the other RPMs around the country run multiple clinics. We have 21 total. That's not many less than most of the others that have, 50 time slots. They're running them at least 2 times. So you only get to see it once, and you only compete against one other clinic, but they run all day. And then about noon we break and start them again until the last one stops at 4:30. And then, as we talked earlier, we have this dinner break for the vendors because that part closes down. And from 5 to 6, we have what we call that spotlight on the models. That area is open. Go grab something to drink and come in and just talk with the people that built those models. We put a lot of chairs out there for people to sit in and be comfortable to chat with the model builders. We have at the same time, we've really catered to the historical societies, and this is their day. So we provide a room for them for about a 90-minute meeting. This year, I think we have 16 or 17 historical societies. There are 2 of them that have yet to sign up. And so they meet and they talk about their common challenges and opportunities and share, and exchange ideas. And so that goes on at that time. And that's the second night this year. It was our only night Friday night, but now with Thursday night open to layout tours and Friday night as well, we have 4 different layout tours available, 2 on Friday night. And then, these items kind of compete with each other, but if you don't choose to spend the night out socializing or in layout tours, you can stay there and look at models. And then we have our keynote speaker. It usually starts at 7:15 and wraps up about 8:30.
Going back to these clinics, I kind of like this idea of only 2 at a time. You don't have to make such hard choices. It seems like I've gone to events where it's like painful to say, oh, I really want this one or this one. Now you just 2. I like that idea.
Yeah, I like that too. And there's a lot of variety too with the clinics, which is very enjoyable. So really that's the difficulty at the St. Louis RPM, is deciding between those 2, which one is the best to go to. And so, because they don't, as far as I know, I don't think they repeat. They're just one-offs. So you have one opportunity to go see a particular clinic. So you need to make your choice and hang your shingle out for that one choice. Go for it. But there's a lot of variety, and there's a lot of interesting clinicians this year with the theme. I don't want to announce the theme, take that glory away from Lonnie, but it's packed. It's going to be fun.
So Lonnie, with this keynote speaker, I imagine this all ties into the theme that you were talking about. Why don't you tell us more about it?
This year's theme is one that's around weathering, and we titled it, I like to put up an unusual title on it to attract people to be curious and read more about it. So this one's called One for the Ages, The Art of Aging Your Models to Your Era. And so with that, I thought there's a lot of things out there on weathering by different people, different tools, techniques, weathering any object you can think of. But when you get into the nitty gritty about what are you weathering and why and what are you trying to make it look like, that's getting very specific, and you can do it right or wrong. Maybe there is no right or wrong, but I don't think you put graffiti on a 40-foot boxcar and say you model 1947, that sort of thing. And so when I got into that, I probably was down to 2 or 3 choices a month to 2 months before last year's RPM, because I tried to announce it that day, and I've had to do a little homework before then. But my deciding factor, if I can go there, was the man we have on here with us tonight, Scott Thornton. When he came out with his book, Scenic and Weathering Techniques, it's the first of that Master Craftsman series from Railroad Model Craftsman. He did a beautiful job of creating kind of a work of art in and of itself, the book itself, the people he invited to offer to present, their skills, their tools, whatever, on the target or subject matter of their choice. He did an incredible job of bringing all that together. And I looked at that and said, that says it all. And I called Scott and said, not only do I love this book, I think that it's the basis from which I could create a theme and run with some of the types of topics and presenters, artists that you have in here. So he agreed to help, and with his help, we recruited a few of these great artists to show their stuff, and they'll be there at this program. They came from Quebec, they came from all over the U.S. They're young and old, cover every topic under the sun, and it's a beautiful book, and we have some of that will be presented, there at the RPM, both in the models you see and at the clinics. So this year's theme, I think, has a general topic that everybody talks about, weathering, but when you get to how do you make something look exactly like it should in a prototypical fashion, whatever it is, a bridge, a boxcar, a building, whatever, it takes certain, media, certain tools, techniques, whatever to do that. And these folks that are presenting are going to bring that out, and I'm kind of thrilled with it. So that's the theme and the topic for the year.
And this has got to be a lot of fun for you, Scott, because it's almost going to be like seeing your book come to life a bit with all these clinics based on your book.
Yeah, it really is. There's 3 modelers that were included in the book, and forgive me if I don't pronounce his name correctly. I call him Matt, but I think it's Mathieu Lachance, I think is how you say his last name. He's a French Canadian, and he's doing a clinic. The same material that he presented in the book, he's doing in his clinic on his CN snowplow. And Matt demonstrated some very innovative techniques for extremely weathered surfaces, peeling paint. And then we have another modeler who's a personal friend of mine, Colin O'Brien, who's going to give a clinic on his Iowa River scene of the Iowa Interstate. Now, that's close to my heart because I model the same railroad. But Colin, in addition to his river scene, is going to be showing or giving an overview of his entire layout. So that's going to be a very interesting clinic. And then the keynote speaker that Lonnie had set up is Butch Eiler. And Butch has come to the St. Louis RPM many times. And Butch is one of the premier weathering artists, I think, in the country. And for the last number of years, he's had learning stations at the RPM. And I sat down with him and learned some of his techniques last year. But he's going to be talking about some of his weathering approaches as the keynote speaker. So that's one not to miss for sure.
You're absolutely right, Scott. He is an absolutely amazing, talented artist.
As this evolved, and I, spent some time talking to Scott and kept coming up with ideas that dealt with this topic of the theme as well as all the others, I think we have maybe 8 or 9 of the topics covered that most RPMers enjoy, whether it's DCC or track laying or whatever. But for Butch, I went to him and I said, Tangent, not too long ago, maybe 2 or 3 years now, produced an 86-foot Greenville double-door boxcar, and they did that car in 4 what I'll call variations of the same railroad. They brought out a brand new 1978 Ann Arbor car, and then they had 3 other models that were that Ann Arbor car, but owned by other railroads over the next 30 years. And I thought that was pretty cool that a model railroad manufacturer would make that replica that you could buy. And, I personally wouldn't run it shiny like that, at least not the other 3 versions, but you could. It had paint outs and so forth on it. So I went to Butch and I said, if we can get all 4 of those models, would you weather them and say there's something like maybe a year past the date that some railroad acquired it and did the paint outs and that sort of thing? So he went off to Amherst that next week, so that puts a time stamp on about when we had that conversation, and found a couple of them, and then other hobby shops had some. I think when we talked to Dave at Tangent, he said, I might have 1 or 2. I know I don't have all 4, but we acquired most of those. And what we didn't have, Butch said, I'll paint it to look like Tangent's version, and then I'll start weathering it. So he's going to give a nice presentation of how this car made it through 30 years. He's weathering it for its age. And I don't know how we could have hit any better of a keynote speaker topic than to have all that I just said unfold before your eyes that night. So I'm thrilled. My goal is to have a keynote speaker each year that has a very broad perspective of whatever that theme is. For instance, the year we had coal, I invited a world-class guy. He owns all the major coal trade magazines on the planet. I invited him to speak about the real world of coal, where he has seen it come in his lifetime. And, you get people like that to talk. So here's Butch talking about a car going over 30 years of life, a lot of different eras there. So I'm thrilled and excited, and I think it's going to be great.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that and seeing Butch. And then, of course, learning more about his amazing techniques and his vision of weathering is certainly amazing. So look, definitely going to have a great time with that. So let's roll into Saturday, the last day of the St. Louis RPM. Tell us a bit about what we can expect to see on Saturday, Lonnie.
Okay, to some degree, it's more of the same. We open at 9 a.m. We have usually more models come in because let's say that we hit 900, just to throw that number out there, or 850 like we had, I think, the last time. So on that second day, about 150 of the total show up. It's not just the last 50 or another 300, but around 150, maybe 200 make it in on Saturday. Some of them bring models, so more models are added to the display tables. And then 9:30 a.m., we start with 2 clinics at a time, all the way till lunch where we break. The whole exhibit area is going with all the historical societies, and we've got an operating railroad this year. It's Mike Skibby and his group out of Chicago with their in-scale layout. I think they're going to be something like 30 by 60 feet of space in the main showroom area. And so all of that's going on and goes on till about 4:30. And that's when we start to wind down and we have the door prize event. One of the things I ask of each and every exhibitor is to donate some kind of door prize. It might be a membership to your society. It could be a book that you just released. It could be your latest model. Some of the larger companies give us nice locomotives, but we give everybody who walks in the door with their ID badge a ticket. It's got a number on it. You peel off one, we keep it, you take the other, and there's a door prize drawing. And so we usually have north of a couple hundred gifts that we give out starting at 4:30, and somewhere around that 5 o'clock range, the vendors start tearing down, and they're quietly disassembling things while people are still hoping to get a shot at whatever's for free on the table. And then my guess is, from looking at the hotel count, because I kind of run that part of it, there's still maybe 50 rooms taken that Saturday night. So some of the vendors, exhibitors, and long-distance travelers just stay another night, go out to eat, enjoy camaraderie of other fellow modelers, and kind of wind into. A lot of people, I think, just like the other events, go to somebody's home and tour, layout, or operate that night. But ours is officially over somewhere near 5:30.
You mentioned it at the top of the show. It really is a great area. There's a multitude of hotels in the area, and it's going to be a pretty hopping place. I think you're going to see your numbers go up. I've heard a lot more people talking about it. It is networked itself very well, so it'll be great to see a big crowd out there at the St. Louis RPM. And with 900 people, I'm sure you'll find somebody to talk to and spend some time with out there.
And it'll be great to see you, Ray. So yeah. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be a great time. I'm looking forward to spending some time and meeting some people, including Lonnie and Scott here in person. Had both on the podcast, obviously. We've interviewed Scott on the podcast, but haven't had a face-to-face meeting. And even Tony Cook. We all hear Tony Cook on here monthly, but I have not met Tony face-to-face yet. Everything's been through the screen, so it'll be good to spend some time with Tony Cook. Going to be hanging out with Matthew Fricks. He'll be heading down from the Chicagoland area down to St. Louis to spend some time with us, and I think he might be my Uber driver too for a little bit of this. So, but looking forward to meeting a whole bunch of folks and, talking to the vendors, seeing the models, just being just completely entrenched in the entire experience. I'm really looking forward to absorbing as much as I can. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
You've asked me what goes on each day, and I failed to mention something that I think attracts a lot of people in terms of
lunch.
Yeah. I love lunch. Yeah. But we have this thing we call the learning stations, and we've bought large banners, thanks to Brian McQuitty's work on this. And the banners just stand by somebody's table who has agreed to spend some part of their day each day, maybe all day, maybe a few hours, and talk about something. It might be a technique like a spray painting. This year, Brian Post is back to talk about JMRI. Jeff Otto usually talks about the newest track planning tool that he has, or technique that he has. And we've got some guys talking about decoder buddies and other DCC things. So you just walk up, sit at a chair at their table, and start asking them questions. We talked about Butch Eiler earlier. The weathering shop has 3 tables with chairs in front of them. You can go up and sit down and watch these guys work. So these learning stations have turned out to be a fun way to spend some time with someone when you're not in a clinic learning or talking to a manufacturer about something. So I failed to mention that, but it's unique to our RPM, and we have about a half a dozen of those every year. And I think people appreciate the fact that they can sit down with somebody who knows what they're talking about, whatever the topic.
Well, I think it's great. It's like a mini clinic, is specialized, and that's great. So you got the big clinics going on, and then you've got these mini pop-up clinics going around the show as well, which is that's really a neat thing to be able to do. Being able to take knowledge home, and I said it multiple times on this podcast that the knowledge just flows out of a lot of these great people, and if you have the opportunity like this one to be able to have that contact with them and just take something away from them, it's just incredible. It's just really, it says a lot for our hobby and the type of people that we have in it.
Yeah. And it's all because they all work together, it's all good.
Right.
So my question to you about hotels, I probably get more calls, particularly from first timers, about getting a hotel room. And if they've gone to the site when clicked open the tab and see the list of hotels and so forth, somehow there's a disconnect between their effort and somebody on the other end of the phone at the hotel. But what I'd say to all of your listeners is, if you just follow the instructions, we go through a lot of painstaking effort to have a local 618 area code, usually 345 prefix for the hotels down there. You get a human that's in that building at that time, most of the time. I know that if they're overworked or understaffed, it rolls to some franchise number for a Hilton or whatever it is. But when you get that local, if you just say, I'm wanting to book a room for the RPM, and you give them those dates of the 18th, 19th, and 20th, anybody there at that desk should be able to open up their book, their computer, whatever, and find a block of rooms for the RPM. We use that DoubleTree by Hilton as what we call the host hotel, because we have a couple of receptions there, if you will, where there's free hors d'oeuvres on Friday night and a cash bar, and a lot of modelers and media go there. But all of them have a block of rooms for us at a discounted price that they hold up until 3 or 4 weeks before the event. And then it's, they run a business. So if we haven't filled that whole block of rooms, then they start releasing them to the general public. But usually, except when the Cubs are in town and there's a Cards-Cubs game, we have a large variety of rooms at different prices, and they're there. But it's just ask for the RPM group rate, and you should get that.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, there's, again, the website is a great resource for all of this information. It's STLRPM.com. Definitely check that out. Now, click what Lonnie's referring to, click on location and hotels. All that information is right there for you, including a bunch of frequently asked questions. So check all that information out on their website, STLRPM.com. I was planning on sleeping on your living room floor at first, Lonnie, but I've got myself booked into a room. So, I've freed up that for somebody else. Yeah. Maybe Scott Thornton will need it or somebody, but nonetheless, looking forward to being out there and spending time with you guys and a whole bunch more. Just can't wait. The July 18th can't come soon enough. Fly into St. Louis and start the awesome weekend of Model Railroad.
Great. 1 month away, roughly.
Well, gentlemen, I thank you for coming on Around the Layout, telling us about the St. Louis RPM. I hope folks that are listening to this, whether it be this year or in a future year, get yourself out to the St. Louis RPM and find out all the things that we're talking about, what makes it so great, and be able to share this event with you. So until late July, gentlemen, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Ray. Appreciate it.
Thank you both. Good to talk to you. See you in a month.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.